A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. John Maxwell. Welcome to the Guyana Dialogue. I am your host, Shamiza Ali. A very happy new year to you and your family. Our topic tonight is a review of Guyana's development objectives and priorities. The Guyana Dialogue is being sponsored by a coordinating council of Guyanese based in the US, UK, Canada, the Caribbean, and Guyana. Funding support is by well known philanthropist Dave Narayan from Dave West Indian Imports. Please welcome my moderator for tonight, Dr. Tara Singh, and
Well,
our panelist, Dr. Ganga Ramdas.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
yeah.
Welcome. Our guest tonight is the ambassador to Brussels. Please welcome Ambassador Sasenarine Singh.
Good night and
Good
Happy
evening.
New Year
Welcome,
to
everyone.
everyone.
Happy New Year to you. Dr. Tara, please go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much. Um, I also want to extend Happy New Year to all of you and to our viewers. I hope this year is a little more productive than last year and everyone is safer this year as well. We are very pleased to have with us the ambassador to European Union, who's based in Brussels, Ambassador Sasenarine Singh. Prior that, prior to that, he held a very important position with the Guyana government, and by profession, I think he is a professional financial and management analyst. Just before I think about a year before the 2020 elections, he and I used to communicate very regularly, and we've been writing articles and letters on the economic and social situation in Guyana. So he has always shown a great love for his country, and we are very happy that he has been given this assignment in Europe where he can promote Guyana's image and its relationship interaction with other states. First of all, Ambassador, I know that this period is very important to from the point of view of the governing PPP party. It's the 75th anniversary of the party. You would like to make a few comments about that before we go into the subject matter proper?
Well, history shapes choices. So, good evening and Happy New Year to all the viewers and you, the panelists. History shapes the future, and every great country need to have bedrock institutions that are there throughout its period. Guyana is a very young country compared to others, and the PPP, when its formation after the PAC, has been with Guyana since before independence. So it's extremely important that institutions of that nature continue to function because uh, at some shape and form, you have many institutions being the custodian of the state. And I have no doubt in saying that the PVP has done a very good job of being a custodian of the society on the social issues, the socioeconomic issues, and the cultural evolution that is happening. I mean, think about Guyana in when the PVP was formed 75 years ago, and Guyana now. It's a phenomenally different society and driven by different indicators. So, congratulations to the founding fathers and congratulations to Guyana for providing the environment so that an organization like the PPP can live for 75 years. I mean, in many countries, political institutions are attacked and destroyed by different kinds of forces. So we have to be grateful as a society that we have an institution that is 75 years old.
I just want to ask a very quick question. I know this is a question raised by many scholars and academics, um, and they have criticized the current leadership of the PPP. or moving away from that pagan democratic socialism to full stage open economy, capitalism, etc. What would you say to them?
As I said in that statement, Guyana, when the PBB was formed 75 years ago, and Guyana now have evolved tremendously. So, any sober institution has to read the tea leaves and evolve with the society. So, I wouldn't want to pretend to be an academic to decide on these things, but the question is, my general statement on that is, we all have to evolve, including you and I, Doc. I mean, as you said,
Mm,
you and I talked a lot 10 years ago, but we don't get the chance to talk. It's not because I don't like you or I stop liking you, but it's just that you've gotten busy with your career. I've gotten busy in a different direction, and things have changed, but we still like each other. So the challenge is, everything is changing, and we all have to respect that nothing stays the same.
mm. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to some areas of development and the objectives. Like, let's go to sector. I mean, we can't deal with all, but we can try to isolate a few. Um, Say the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure sector. I'm talking about roads, bridges, airports, etc. How do you assess this if the government is moving in the right direction at the right pace? And how does this balance with other sectors' investment?
Look, we have an expert in the room in Dr. Ramdas, so he understands developmental economics even better than I. But I will use my knowledge to explain what I foresee. I see um, Guyana's core economy, while we are bequeathed with the wealth of oil, remains agriculture, manufacturing, construction. Those three sectors has to be the the drivers of Guyana's economy for the next 50 years, maybe beyond. Now, added to that, as I said, we were started this conversation about evolution. There's now a new sector that is ripe for the picking in Guyana, what we call the digital technology sector. Um, that, if harnessed carefully and in a very systematic way, can add great value to Guyana over the next 50 years and beyond. Oil is there, yes. Oil will not be there forever. And oil is a means to an end. What is the end? The end is a growing economy that is stable and is providing incremental wealth to the nation, so that the people can can benefit from the bounties of what the economy can generate. But the foundation of the economy still will remain agriculture, manufacturing, construction, which includes the housing sector, and now bolting on the digital technology sector. Um, but all of that has to be framed under energy security. Guyana has been struggling with energy since 1986. I was just reflecting on when blackouts started happening, and since 1986, I don't know. People would remember we had a barge that came in 1989 with an idea of solving our energy crisis. It didn't. And since 1986, Guyana has been carrying this burden. And yes, we now have two power boats. I'm in Georgetown, Guyana right now, and I can tell you those power boats made a difference. The season was blackout free after Christmas. So it felt good. It felt really good. But the question remains, um, I know there's a lot of narrative around oil, 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 but I think it's a distracted narrative, because the core narrative is, what are we going to do with this oil money to ensure that the foundational sectors of Guyana are structured properly, empowered properly, and generating jobs and wealth for the people at the right pace so that the country can continue growing. Growing at 30% is not possible forever, but growing at a rate that that will continue to offer generational wealth, and transferring of that generational wealth to the masses is critical. So I see a constant pace like India and China, for example. They're growing at between 6 to 7%. That is the growth rate. If you do that continuously, you will see transformational wealth in the nation over generations. Um, so Guyana is fortunate. Yes, we started from a low base, and because of this oil, we're now leapfrogged into to middle income status. But we have to be very careful about the oil because it can add a lot of heat to the economy that can be uncontrollable if it's not managed properly. Um, Markley is we have to avoid the Dutch disease. We have to avoid self self injurious inflations, whereby we create the inflation on our own by spending too much without matching it with productivity on the other side. So it's a balance. It's always a balance, and and hence I don't envy the policymakers who have to be making these decisions. It's a lot of balancing has to be done, and to be able to maintain the economic growth without creating too much inflation. And inflation is driven by many factors, not just internally, but also externally, because it could be imported via your imports. But so Guyana is in a good place, a very good place post COVID. The question is, we have to always be able to continue balancing. And I could say what I've seen, one of the things I always do when I come to Guyana is go on the construction sites. And what I've seen on like for the Ogle to the East Bank Public Road access, today I went on the projects that are running through South Rheinveld that is connecting the Ogle Road. I've seen the project on the Linden to Maburu side. Those projects are all pushing forward at the right pace. I went to see the gas to shore location along with the Harbor Bridge project. Everything is pushing forward. What you're seeing in Guyana now wasn't there 6 months ago. As I was telling someone, there was a connecting route that connects the East Bank Public Road to what we call Heroes Highway at Eccles. 6 months ago, when I went on that project, it was inaccessible. Today, it's days away from a highway, fully lit, fully integrated at the international standards. And that's 6 months. That's 6 months. So the transformation is happening at a very rapid pace,
Mm.
infrastructure wise.
Just a question. I know I don't know if it's fair to ask you. You're not an engineer, but there have been complaints about the quality of work on these roads, the construction. Like you had a few concrete poles that was supposed to in the electricity sector that fell, and there were a lot of queries about the quality of work, whether specifications were followed as per contract, etc. So Professor Boudou, who is a specialist in engineer architecture, he had stated some time ago that the government should have proper what you call project management. I think they do have, but he was asking for more details, and he was willing even to lend his service to help them to develop. Um, I don't know. He's an engineer, but he said that they can do a lot better in the project management area. And but do you have any views on that from a layman point of view about the
Well,
quality of work?
I can tell you, I wouldn't want to call it layman. I want to be a little bit I want to seize the moment, so to speak, because what I met at Gaisuku in 2020 required a lot of project management. And one of the things after I resigned from that job, I can tell you is this: coordination is critical. And I sense that the different agencies, and as I say, we're experiencing in Guyana called growing pains. Um, and in that environment of growing pains, one of the things that I can take away from the entire experience is coordination. And all project management professionals will tell you uh, monitoring and evaluation is critical. It is as important as conceptualizing and implementation,
Mm-hmm.
because what it does, if any time an activity is not being done on time, or according to quality, it then kicks back into a new cycle and get remedied. So more of that needs to be done. More monitoring and evaluation needs to be done. But there's reasons for these things. I can tell you, I've been talking to a lot of contractors, and they're telling me they're struggling to find enough talent. There is talent in Guyana, but they need more engineers, more engineering technicians, more plumbers, more carpenters, more mason men, more people who understand steel work. We need more of this all the time. And that, so the one of the factors that goes into projects is, and the most important factor actually, is manpower, but the right manpower. We need more of the right manpower. But also, I'm hoping that we will be able to upgrade the engineering laws as well as the building codes in Guyana. It's way outdated. It
Mm-hmm.
needs to be updated, and once it's updated and standardized to what is the norm globally, I suspect some of these growing pains will address themselves. But monitoring and evaluation
Mm-hmm.
is a continuous science. It has to continue. There will be mistakes, but what do you do with a mistake? When a man falls down on his knees, what do? You stand up again and fix it. What we need to continuously doing is each becoming solutions engineers, finding the solutions to problems, not looking at the problems and complaining, but finding solutions to the problems. And there are lots of challenges with regards to some of these projects, but what do we do with the challenges? We find the solutions and we keep moving forward. We can't stop. We cannot stop at this point in time. We have to push forward. And when you see the transformation and you see like if you take a small plane, like if ever you're going to Kaicho Falls or anywhere and you fly over Georgetown a little bit and you reflect on what it was 5 years ago and what it is now, it's chalk and cheese. The country has moved forward infrastructurally tremendously.
Thank you, Ambassador. Dr. Ganga.
Thank you, Dr. Tara. Now, if we have been listening carefully to Ambassador Sasenarine, he has given us a lot of food for thought. As you slice and dice what he has said, he did at the beginning spoke about the role of agriculture as being vital to the economy of Guyana. I agree with that fully. Now, he also mentioned about the sectors in Guyana. I think Dr. Tara sparked that uh, a question that required that. Now, I have been assembling data and trying to put it in perspective. The sectors really provide the opportunities for policy levers to be applied. And as I reconstructed the national accounts framework to look at development matters, I found that the relative sizes are the government sector is about 30%. If you look at income and spending, it's about 30%. The business sector is about 55%, and the household is just merely 15%, which is quite small. So we have to create a balanced framework or a balanced set of sectors so that we can successfully apply our policy levers in the areas of, and I will like Ambassador to deal with each one of these. Land development for agriculture, then labor organization, which should involve peasant or small farming and land ownership versus the commercial type estates, uh, and how that should be organized and managed. So we have land, we have labor organization, and then most importantly, if you recall when we had the trains, the produce from Blackbush and Berbice would go to the Georgetown with trains. My grandmother from Bedford, she transported her stuff on trains. They got up early, joined the train, and then took it to border market and so forth. So from farm to market, it's very important. And the transportation, not just the roads is one aspect, but whether we have public versus mass transportation, that's a complementary to our development thrust. And then we have the other part is technology. I think Ambassador has commented on that in some of his articles. Technology, for example, for transforming the cambered cane beds into flat beds. Okay, so we have the government sector dealing with those things, and we have the business sector, which is about 55%, and that's where it's capital intensive there. So I would like Ambassador to deal with each of these, and we can start by looking at agricultural development policies and land, including land distribution. What's the status of that in your point of view? We could start with that one.
Thank you very much. Quite a lot of requests there, but I'll try my
Yeah.
best. But let's start with let's frame this within what His Excellency is projected to the world. Um, he spoke about food security, energy security, and digital transformation as in an environment where we protect um, our biodiversity so that wealth can be created for our people within those three developmental trusts. But let's start with food security. And I want to advance it a little bit with an additional term called food sovereignty, because it's something I discovered when I was in Europe. Europe is focused a lot on this concept of food sovereignty, especially in this environment where the Ukraine war has happened, because they depended a lot on Ukraine for some of their elementary foods. And now that trunk main of food is interfered with. So they're focused a lot on something called food sovereignty. Now, food sovereignty, based on my understanding, is grow what you eat. Um, Guyana grows a lot of what it eats, but think about wheaten products. Guyana doesn't grow any wheaten products, but we eat a fair amount of wheaten products, bread, roti, and those kinds of things. Um, so there's a disconnect there immediately. So I'm celebrating the fact that last year His Excellency launched wheat trials in the hinterlands at a place called Paramakatoy K2 area, and I spoke to the technicians on that matter, and the feedback is that the trials were successful. So for me, that is extremely exciting because here is an opportunity for us to now move even closer to food sovereignty, and if we want to say food security. Um, And that is married within a multilateral approach that His Excellency has been pushing with reducing the food import bills across CARICOM by 25% by 2025. And the latest statement that His Excellency made, he said we are on track to achieving that. Now, if anybody understands the geography of Guyana, they will know Quito is in the hinterlands, it's in the mountainous areas. How do you get that wheat to the flour mill in Georgetown? Um, and this now brings the idea that you, Dr. Ramdas, has planted trains. Um, it has been established around the world, even from India, Europe, America. The most efficient way they're moving produce in mass numbers is via the railway lines. So this now that Guyana has been blessed with some additional resources via the oil industry, um, this can now get factored in. I mean, when we were under the HIPIC arrangement, and when Comrade Cherry Jagan came in, and 98 or around 99% of his income when he was earning there as a government was going towards paying debt. There was no way we could have envisioned or implemented a railway system in Guyana because there was no money. All the money was going towards paying debt. But fortunately for Guyana, I mean, careful management over the years, especially, I mean, the longest serving finance minister and president, Dr. Bar Jagdeo, careful management of the economy. But it's we're adding to that now with some additional bounty via the oil revenues. And I think this idea that you've planted makes absolute sense, Dr. Ramdas. It is time that we start relooking at the transportation model to include more trains, especially coming out of the hinterlands, because we have to be able to connect. We must connect. I'm in Guyana, so sometimes we get some extra music on the minibuses passing on the road. But but getting back to this is so I think it's a very good idea to add train to the developmental model that we're thinking about with regards to moving produce to the markets, because the majority of the market is on the coastline. The majority of the market, it could be in Brazil. The majority of the market can be in the Caribbean. The majority of the market can be even further afield in North America. But as an immediate focus point, we should be concentrating on northern Brazil, CARICOM, the coastlands of Guyana, getting food to these locations without having to pay foreign currency for these food. All of it being generated here in Guyana. And hence, you're right, we should pay more attention to train systems, and whether it is feasible now that the risk profile in Guyana has changed for the better. The risk profile in Guyana has changed. And the time is right for us to maybe revisit. The European Union did a transportation study for all of Guyana. Maybe it might be a good idea to revisit that. But let's move to the other point. You talk about land ownership. I know you might be aware that the government of Guyana has transferred 40,000 house lots to the people. Um, if we look at our entire history, that is the greatest transfer of land to the people ever in our history, that 4 year period. Greatest transfer of land. Um, of course, coming back again to the whole idea of monitoring and evaluating, making sure that the people are developing those lands, because it costs close to $4 to $5 million to develop those lands. I can tell you some of these lands were cane fields, and cane fields, um, the soil structure doesn't cater for effective building unless you improve it with sand and loom and other sorts of ameliorants to strengthen the infrastructure. So it cost the government a lot of money, $4 to $5 million, to develop some of these house lots. And then these house lots are sold to the public at a deeply discounted price. The low income houses at 700, I think the middle income is about 2 to 3 million, and the high income at market value. So the question remains, um, a lot of land ownership is being transferred to the people. What I think might be important is to pedal back maybe in 2 years' time to see how many of these house lots are converted into homes, into small enterprises, to ensure that the householders um, can improve their 15% based on your research, Dr. Ramdas, to a better number. Um, and I'm grateful that you did this work, because this is the kind of data mining and data analysis is what is pertinent to policymaking. So it's important, and all policymakers I know are reading the Bank of Guyana quarterly reports, and of course half yearly reports, as well as the Ministry of Finance put out a very good document at the half year and of course annually. So data is always welcomed, especially when you're growing at this pace. With regards to the labor organization, you mentioned that. Look, the world has changed. Social media has created a, a metamorphic change in the way a person looks at their life with regards to how they're going to share this labor with the rest of the community. Um, More people are trying to move away from the traditional way of working, either in the fields or in the factories, and people want to do more automated sort of laboring. And you can't blame them, because with social media, everybody understands what's happening in Singapore, what's happening in Europe, what's happening in North America, and people aspire to that. And thus, you have to facilitate that aspiration. Now, if that aspiration is happening, then you have to do like what we did at Gaisuku. I mean, during my tenure, we moved from 18% mechanized field to 40% mechanized field in 3 years. It took I think about 20 years to get from 5 to 18%. But in 3 years, when I was there, we moved from 18% mechanized fields to 40%. That agenda has to continue, because more and more of the young people, while their fathers were field workers, they're not interested in being field workers. They want to fly drones. They will go to Gaisuku and work in the fields, but as a drone pilot. But drones are needed in Gaisuku to apply agrochemicals and fertilizers and so forth. So you can get that generational impact, but what happens? They're coming at a different level. But then you don't need so many workers, because what one drone can do, 10 workers used to do before. Like one of the things a lot of people, a cane harvester, there's different sizes, but what we call the John Deere cane harvester, the bigger ones, can replace 200 workers, can do the job of 200 workers. The smaller one, which was coming from India, can replace about 80 workers instantly. So the reality is two things. We're not getting enough replacement. You got to remember the days when Gaisuku had so much workers. Men used to stand at that gate from 4 a.m. and who's in the line, then somebody will come and says, okay, this is where we stop, and everybody else have to turn and go back. Today, anybody who wants a job in the field in Gaisuku is guaranteed a job, because as soon as they turn up, they're absorbed. There's a shortage of worker, so you have to fill that gap. So the laboring class is moving to a different class. They want to be more in the automotive world, and you cannot resist this transformation. You have to embrace it, but it has to be complemented with, and I know that the government is working on a migration strategy. It has to be complemented with a migration strategy. because um, Guyana is, we have too few people to fuel this transformation and ambitions of the president and his team. They have big ambitions, but we need people. People are critical. We need more. I've known of contractors who are bringing Surinamis now to do plumbing in this country because we can't find enough plumbers. It's as simple as that. And paying them almost, some of them are getting 15,000 Guyana dollars a day. Now, fine, you might say, well, that's not 100 US, but the cost of living is not the same as the US. So, so I mean, and the Surinamis are coming and working for that kind of money. We have lots of Venezuelans who are here because of a different reason. They have their economic migrants, but they're in the construction sector doing great work in masonry. I've seen some of the output from the Venezuelans on in the construction sector. They're excellent masons, excellent masons. The Brazilians are here helping us in agriculture and other fields, in the mining sector and so forth. So, but we need to have I know it's being worked on, a migration policy and strategy to complement the evolution in the labor situation in Guyana. But what I saw from, and Dr. Ganga can confirm this. What I saw from Europe and also read about in the United States, even though I lived in the States for 12 years, um, one of the vehicles being used by these developed countries right now to fuel the jobs for the people is the small and medium sized enterprise. I mean, you would know in the US they have a deliberate tax policy and incentivization policy that is geared towards minorities, women, disabled, um, so that they can get in to small and medium sized businesses in service to the federal and state governments. So that is also being practiced here in Guyana in a big way, trying to build a new contracting class, a new entrepreneurial class. But um, so there's a lot of things happening in Guyana. Um, but as I said, it's only 4 years, and we have to be able to measure from where we came to where we are now. Thank you.
Mhm. I
Yeah, let me just pick up on that. So, thank you,
oh,
Mr. Ambassador. You touched on something very important there on business organizations, with the emphasis on small businesses. That's vital. We have to keep monitoring that. So, in that regard, there are two questions I have here. Um, Gaisuko's production of sugar has been reduced substantially. I remember when I would do the numbers, 365, 385,000 tons was the benchmark. Now it's under 100,000 tons of sugar. So the question is, how do we zone the land so that we cater to Gaisuko's smaller production needs in terms of acres to satisfy the objective of, let's say, 100,000 tons of sugar. So if you add up all the estates, there are lots of land, and there will be a surplus of land. And now we have the alongside that the demands or the requirements for small businesses and small farmers as well, especially if we look at small estates, coconut estates, mango estates, and so forth. How do we can you comment on the land zoning at Gaisuko in order to satisfy these different requirements?
No, we must frame every conversation within the context. In 2020, when I joined the team, there was three functioning estates at Gaisuku. Compared to in the past, Gaisuku were having 11 estates to produce 300,000 plus metric tons of sugar. By 2020, it was three estates. Um, Iflut, which is a very small estate, Blairmont, and Albion. Albion is a fairly big estate. Actually, Albion is Albion Port Morant because there's a combination of those two estates. So that is what one of the things that we have to frame it with. So then we also met an industry that was deliberately being shuttered. So there was no investment being made in recapitalizing. Actually, I was looking at the statistics in 2019. Gaisuku spent 500,000 Guyana dollars on capital equipment in 2019. Gaisuku spent $6 billion, sorry, on the Rosal factory alone between 2021 to 2023. So there was a deliberate strategy to de-emphasize the sugar industry. Um, and hence it ended up with three estates. So it was on its knees. I know that there it was a manifesto promise and a commitment made by His Excellency the President in to the public that sugar is here to stay. That's the word that he keep mentioning. Sugar is here to stay. So everything was framed within that objective that while it was on its knees, sugar is here to stay, and hence we had to build what you call we built in 2021 um, a strategic plan for Gaisuku from 2021 to 2026, and that is what is being implemented right now. Um, in that plan resides an agricultural improvement plan and a factory improvement plan. As part of the agriculture improvement plan, I'll tell you, when I went to Rose Hall Estate in 2020, there were three gaping holes in the factory. Each one of those holes were big as a school, big as a school. Because of this, all the elements, the rain, whatever, was coming and destroying sensitive equipment within that factory. Now, that was happening to that factory from 2017, 2018, 2019, going into 2020, 2021, it even going to because we didn't fix the roof until the end of 2021. Now, um, all of that equipment got damaged, rusted, damaged beyond repair. We had to degut that entire factory, and rebuild it. So, and it was done with Guyanese labor. Strangely enough, a project as vast and big like this, you would have had to import maybe people from Europe or India or wherever to complement the technical competence of the team. Didn't happen at Rosal. It was a Guyanese team that rebuilt that factory from scratch, degot it and rebuilt it. And you know why this happened? This happened because none of these factories were decommissioned. And any engineer will tell you when you close a factory, you decommission it. It means you grease down all the moving parts, you cover things, you assess things, you catalog things, so you hand over. While you close the factory, you hand over enough data and you've taken enough measures to prepare for a reopening if possible. But when that factory was closed, it was closed with an intention never to reopen again. Never to reopen again. However, it was reopened and removed from 3 to 4 estate. It's now 20,000 hectares of land on the Gaisuku um, that is cultivated. And as I said to you, the solution is mechanization of those fields because you're seeing the benefits of that. One of the things that we introduced, the government of Guyana introduced for the first time, was the planting of cane with a machine. A machine was brought from Brazil and it was planting the cane. And as you said, we had to move from those Dutch bed, which are small, to the broad beds, as we call them, which is more flatter, a flatter camber, that the machines can plant and harvest. mechanically and load it even into the pond mechanically. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no need for men, because when the rain, if there's a shower, then the soil gets a little bit mushy. It means that there's room for complementary services. For you to harvest 20,000 hectares, we don't have enough men to do it. And that's the plain truth. So you have to have a model where man and machine work side by side to make sure that that land is utilized efficiently, and so that the productivity can go up. There's also a great need for what we call varietal improvement. And one of the things we did was brought over some Brazilian species. I think we need to expand on that to bring maybe some Cuban species, some Brazilian species, to see. And there's a research station in Barbados also, bring some additional species from those areas, so that we can expand on our variety program here. It is one of the greatest weakness. I wish more could be done. I mean, even I have to accept that not enough was done in expanding the variety program. But when everything else was crumbling, you had to get quickly to the low hanging fruits right away, and also to fulfill the mandate given to you by the policymakers, which is reopen a sugar, reopen an estate, which we did successfully in 2023. Um, so there's enough land to do that 100,000. I'm not going to tell you there isn't, but it's a work in progress, and it's moving in that direction. I believe in 2023, when I was there, we made 60,204 metric tons of sugar, and I believe it can go to 100,000. But we have to be able to convert more of the land quickly, and we have to be able to plant the cane. Sugar doesn't come out of the tin air; it comes from cane.
Yeah, your comments have pointed to another important matter, and that is the diversification process and the production of ethanol to form gasohol. I've seen a species that in Australia, cairns, northern Australia, cairns. Those species, if they're adaptable to Guyana, they too, in addition to the Brazilian ones, can be harvested mechanically. I've seen the process at work. I've seen the stalks of the cane. They're almost weed like. It's not like the Diamond 10 with a juicy, plump type of a cane, but these are like almost like bamboos, so to speak, and it's easily harvested. And seen it on the ground and from a cable car above, and seen the entire process there. And I think gasohol, production of gasohol, can keep a core set of land use for production of the cane for that for gasohol and also for molasses. So can you comment on Gaisuko's plans on that?
Well, you put me in a very unfortunate position, because I wish my successor all the best of luck. I even talk to him. We share knowledge all the time to make sure that his tenure is as successful as possible. As I said, I met an excellent team at Gaisuku, and I'm really proud of them. But I don't want to. I've did my time, and all they can expect from me now is support, support, support. Whatever I can do to help is to help them, because the mantle is in their hands, and it's a sensitive time. And I we could talk sugar from now till Christmas 2025. The reality is, um, Gaisuku has strong information and data on what needs to be done. So we have to just keep helping them doing it. There are lots and lots of experts in sugar right now. I mean, I think sometimes they're not celebrated enough. and we have to give them a chance to do their thing. So, I mean, with all due respect to you, Doc, um, I might beg to defer on talking on Gaisuku more, because I want to wish this team, and I want to give them all my blessings and support, because sugar is entwined with the history of Guyana. And as the president says, sugar is here to stay. And all of us are lined up, ambassadors, everyone who loves Guyana is lined up to ensure that the sugar industry succeeds. That is our
Mhm.
mandate. That's our mandate. Yes, there's different mutations, but the reality is, I think people have to understand sugar is not a political game. It's not a competitive environment. There's 8,000 people working at sugar, and more than 80% of them are in the bottom 50% of the population. They're poor people. They don't have many options. And that's why sometimes I think there's a disconnect by some people when they speak, oh, is a drain on Guyana. Did they calculate how much the sugar industry contributed to the treasury via the sugar levy? More than $500 billion over the years. So this is not that sugar is a drain. Sugar is never a drain on Guyana. Sugar is
Yeah.
an asset to Guyana. Is an
I,
asset to Guyana.
I just want to add something there, Ambassador. I did a calculation based on data I had from the Ministry of Agriculture. The per capita per worker subsidy to bauxite tongue is far greater, more than 2 times, than the per capita subsidy to sugar workers. I wrote an article on that. It was published in Guyana too, but nobody took it up. The data is there to establish that. But coming back again to the question of data, data is so important. It guides policy to a large extent. But the problem we have, like, I don't know if you know about this, but the minister responsible for finance has stated a few weeks ago that the census results will be released before the end of 2024. I don't know whether it was released or not, but I was trying to find out, but nobody can tell me whether it was released or not. But the census is a body of data that can inform the government on policy, their strategy in social, how many people will get old age pension, how many this, how many go retire. It's tied up with all policy making. And to keep this census results, you promise that you're going to deliver them before the end of the year, of the 2024. And now we don't know whether these results were released or what. You have any idea about this?
No, I think you and I are in the same boat, Dr. Taro.
Because
I, I I can seek to find out, but I don't have an idea
I
whether it
I
was
have a lot
released.
of requests from academics and scholars and students who want to have a look at this and then to do their own data analysis. It's tied up with so many things, income groups, what it can even give us some insights into the poverty level, etc. Some, I was hoping that the minister would have stuck to his promise that they'll make the results available before the end of the year, but maybe he did, but I haven't seen anything. Um, I know sugar is very close to you, and but I want to talk a little. We have a little more time to talk about this question that is big. The president was focusing on food security, energy security, and climate too. You know,
Mhm.
the the so if you can talk a little about that, the this policy, the low carbon development strategy 2030, and how that is tied into the development of Guyana.
Well, I can talk about it from what I've observed in Europe. The low carbon development strategy is a celebrated document in Europe. It's well known. in and Guyana is well respected in those circles with regards to what we've done. Because when the low carbon development strategy was conceptualized, and before that, it had a predecessor document that the Honorable Dr. Barjagdio, who was president at that time, conceived. Um, we were a little country, but we were punching internationally on what we were willing to contribute to the preservation of the earth. Um, a lot of people don't realize Guyana has basically contributed 87% of its forest to the world. Now, we can maybe seek to aggressively harvest more of this forest, but the policymakers saw the merit of preservation of the forest, and having a developmental model that places biodiversity high on its agenda. Now, you would have known that the Iwakama rainforest, for example, it's exclusively being used for either ecotourism, forestry research, and a managed harvesting of the forest that that is teaching the world how to do forestry. Guyana is working closely with the European Union on a forestry program to ensure that we follow the best international practices with regards to our harvesting techniques. Um, so, by and large, Guyana has made a huge sacrifice towards the world. Um, and we have to thank the policymakers for taking such hard decisions. It's not easy to put aside your national assets and not convert it or monetize it for the benefits of the people. Um, but it shows that we're thinking ahead. So in Europe, Guyana is celebrated that we are a carbon sink that is absorbing 19.5 gigatons of carbon. And that's a number that the president keeps telling the world all the time, even when he was at Oxford University. I was there. Um, he spoke to that community on what Guyana has done. It was an eye opener for many of these professors and students. I mean, many of these students will become world leaders in their own right, whether in the businesses in the United States or Europe, or some might even be presidents in the future. But the reality is, lots of people, what the message that the president carried at Oxford, lots of people were hearing it for the first time, and it piqued an interest that, hey, this country Guyana, they're doing all of this. Where are they? Some people were even now discovering Guyana for the first time in that lecture hall. So, but the other good thing that is happening for Guyana is we are one of the 8 countries of the world that is a carbon sink, which means we are absorbing more carbon than we're emitting to the world. So we're doing the right thing. And even if we maximize the harvesting of this oil, we will only be able to destroy 20% of that carbon sink that we're generating right now. So we're well poised to be a carbon sink for the rest of our lives. Well poised. And you got to commend the policymakers for holding this path or this developmental trust, because it's not easy for small countries to not want to monetize their assets. But we've been doing it.
Okay, how that is linked to the hydroelectric power generation and solar panels, etc. Isn't that also consistent with the low carbon development strategy to get less environmental pollution? Because these are more environmentally friendly, like electricity, solar panel, etc., as opposed to fossil fuel.
Right. So the way we need, and one of the things that His Excellency has been talking about is energy security. Now, no country, and Dr. Ganga Ramdas will tell you this, no country can develop without low cost and reliable electricity. No country. It is not possible. You have to get low cost and reliable electricity. So, our electricity plan as a country can be reflected on in a short term and medium term approach. In the short term, the trust is the gas to shore project. And, some people are saying, oh, it's gas. But do they understand what we're burning to generate electricity today? We're burning something called bunker C. Bunker C is the lowest grade and most pollutant fossil fuel you can ever think about.
Mhm.
So we're moving from bunker C to gas, which is a halfway house. We'll improve our contribution to the climate change initiative by 50% immediately. And what we'll be doing is moving up the scale with regards to quality of how we're destroying the earth with fossil fuel. And at the same time, the government again is committed to cutting the cost to the consumers by 50% when the gas to shore project comes online. Now, understand this: electricity in Guyana is about 32 US cents a kilowatt hour now. So that's like 16 cents we'll be putting back into the people's pocket. That's money. Dr. Ganga talked about small enterprise development and so forth. That is money that they can now divert to investing in their own small enterprise. They're investing in themselves. Think about a hairdresser, for example. Right now, she pays a certain amount of light bill, or we call cosmetologist in the modern world, but hairdresser we call them here in Guyana, or salon. Um, so that's money he or she can convert back into new equipment, into that same salon. So can you imagine what something like that will do? And in the medium term, we still have the Amila hydropower project on the radar. But the reality is, all eyes are on the gas to shore project. All energies are on gas to shore project. And it's really good to see how they're developing because I've seen that too, developing the transmission and distribution lines from the Wales location to the different substations at Good for Wacton, which is around Plaisance, and the other one at Rangveld, so that this energy can be, and then also some of it will be fed into Garden of Eden, so that this energy can be distributed across Guyana. This low cost and reliable electricity.
Mhm.
And
All right, thank.
I don't know if you know, but I just saw, excuse me, that the gas pipeline to Vredenhoop is being completed.
Yeah. By the way, quickly, you mentioned about getting different varieties of cane from various sources. I think the Ministry of Agriculture has just announced that they have retained some technical help from India, where they have established or in the process of establishing a tissue culture lab,
Very good.
which will be able to facilitate food production in various areas. Now, Dr. Ganga,
Yes.
your final.
Yes, I would just like to pick up on the statement made by Ambassador, the preservation of the earth. So we have resources above ground and we have resources below ground. We save the trees and the timber. That's our policy right now. But we are also mining uh, below ground. Below ground has the gold, and I did some research and found out something that is startling. If I remove from the GDP the oil sector, all the numbers that pertain to oil, the mining and quarrying dropped by 4.8% in 2023 year. from
No.
between let me get that straight, 2019 to 2023, mining and quarrying dropped by 4.8%. So while we're sparing the timber, we're mining the and crushing the stones to take out the gold. And if this statistic is true, that mining and quarrying plummeted, dropped, we need to investigate that thoroughly to find out, well, how does this affect Guyana in terms of finances and so forth? That's something that needs to be followed up on.
Okay, let me just make a comment there. The Vice President did a press conference yesterday, and he said that quarrying this year, the end of 2024, the production increased by 59%, quarrying, sand by 26%, stones and these things by 59%. So that trend that you're speaking about, that has stopped, is going upwards now. Production has gone upwards. Gold production has also increased, but I don't have the figure for that. Bauxite production increased by 136%. So, um, Ambassador, I want to make a final observation and ask you a comment. Now, every morning or every day, I read the main papers, I look at social media,
Hmm.
I see a lot of articles written about oil, oil or power sharing, corruption. There's hardly any focus on social issues, education, health. People do not touch those areas. I wonder why. Why there's this almost neurotic preoccupation with oil, corruption, whatever. They don't focus on these social issues, and it troubles me a lot. I try to do some articles and letters on that, but not many people are these areas important. The government is building 6 regional hospitals, brand new, plus they got the specialty hospital at Ogle. All these are important, plus they're going to rehabilitate a number of hospitals throughout the country. They have trained over 6,000 nurses and how many doctors. These are very important things that people need. I mean, your doctor, as people say in our culture, is the doctor is next to God. Um, and these are important stories to tell, but somehow or the other, journalists are not focused on those areas. They only focus on oil, where we can get more money, just economic, or how we can share power sharing. You want to make any comment on that, though? And I will add,
Our socialization, we are a very competitive society. Yeah? I presume as we get wealthier, we will evolve our thinking. But I think a lot is happening, and I think people are silently recognizing what is happening. Let's reflect on the United States, for instance. For the last 6 months, we would have watched all of those news shows: ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, of course. Um, and if you were to look at 6 of those 7 names that I called, you would have arrived at a conclusion that was not really the conclusion that happened in the United States. ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, MSNBC, they all had a narrative. And it was, I mean, when you listen to the narrative, you actually start to believe this narrative sometimes if you
mhm,
weren't intellectually analyzing it.
mhm,
So, but the American people thought differently, yeah? And we have to respect the will of
mhm,
the voter. So I sense there are a lot of people are recognizing what is happening in Guyana, but they don't control the narrative. There's a preponderance of narrative, and I suspect there's nothing you can do uh, except to keep putting out the data and the facts and to combat the narrative, because narrative can be progressive and narrative can be counterproductive.
Mhm.
And if there's counterproductive narrative, you need to just keep battling it with data, real data. So you just talk about six regional hospital, specialty hospital, which is being built by the Austrians, the specialty pediatric
Mhm.
hospital.
Mhm.
Now, we never had something like this in Guyana. This is something we should be celebrating, that the Europeans are in Guyana building a state of the art European standard pediatric hospital that is focused on children. Um, but even that gets criticized. So the point is, you have to allow the people to think, and people are reflecting. A lot of people are reflecting quietly.
Mhm.
Um, and one of the things I saw in the United States is that if you ever push your head up to combat that narrative coming out of the mainstream media, you got attacked brutally.
Mhm.
People called you all sorts of names on television.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and hence the rational thinker, rather than deal with that kind of attack, they just stayed quiet and waited their day, and allowed their day to be a reality.
Mhm.
So I believe that I want to close on this idea that economic progress is happening. People are recognizing that economic progress is happening, and yes, everybody wants solution, and nothing is perfect in this world, but the needle is pointed north. It's moving forward. It's not retrogressing,
Mhm.
and people know this and people recognize this.
Okay. All right. Let me pass you over to Shamiza, our host. Shamiza.
Thank you, Dr. Tara. Thank you, Dr. Ganga. And Ambassador, I can tell you're very passionate about our beautiful country and about what you can offer to our country, which brings me to a question from Rajendra Singh. He says, many Guyanese felt that you were the best man to head Gaisuku and was doing a great job in transforming and rebuilding the corporation. Could you tell us why you were removed from that position? Did you receive a promotion?
Um, I everyone who served at my level served at the pleasure of the president. My objective was always to serve 3 years at Gaisuku. I served 3.5 years. I resigned from Gaisuku, but I see that my role in Brussels is serving Guyana at a higher level, and I'm doing more strategic work than I've ever done before. So, and I'm unleashing some skill set that I thought I never had. So I don't know why, again, narrative, why people I wish, and I give all my support to my successor. I think he can do it. Um, I have no ill words to give to him. I would always support him, and he continues to get my support because, as I said, sugar is not about I or you or individuals. It's a team effort, and it's a national asset, and we all have to contribute towards the preservation of this national asset. But I mean, I'm learning a lot about myself in Europe because I'm right now learning French. Now, something I couldn't do when I was at Gaisuku because you were too busy. So I'm getting to learn, and it's something that is important because in the world, languages and these kinds of things are very important when you punch above your weight class. Guyana remains a small country, but we have to be recognized like Singapore. Singapore is a small country, but around in all the boardrooms of the world, Singapore is well known and well respected. That you need a cadre of people to help Guyana also get into that status of being Singapore's. We can aspire and can be the Singapore of the Caribbean. you know. So I mean, I thank Rajendra for his comment, but I'm happy where I am.
Can Guyana grow wheat and do trading? And this question is from Linda Singh.
I don't know if we can trade wheat because the people who grow wheat in Ukraine and America, they do it quite competitively. The argument that I was putting forward is that we should grow wheat for our food sovereignty or food security, for our own consumption, our people. Because every time you bring a wheat boat to Guyana, it means you got to transfer so much thousands of US dollars to the wheat supplier in America. When that cash can be transferred to the wheat planter in Paramakatay and Keto, made in Guyana for Guyanese by Guyanese. I think it's an idea, and I think it's something that we should explore.
Thank you. This question is from Maya Sabrina Akhtar. She says, how are we utilizing the Venezuelans when it comes to rebuilding?
I did say that they're excellent masons and they're being well utilized in the construction sector. But one of the other things I saw over the Christmas, they have taken pole position on what we call street foods. They are producing some real good quality street foods in Guyana. The best grilled chicken on Cherry Street is being done right now by the Venezuelans. And we have to accept it and we have to acknowledge it. Our cuisine is also expanding. Empanadas now is a norm in Guyana. 10 years ago, nobody was interested in empanadas. It's a norm in Guyana now.
Okay. Ramona Karim is saying this is just a statement. She says the government should ensure that Venezuelans, as well as all domestic workers, contribute to NIS contributions, as this will make a difference when they become nationalized Guyanese. Employers must make the deductions remitted to the system. And then we have another comment from Rajendra. He says, we would like to thank the ambassador for his bravery and his resolve in fighting the election rigors. Your contributions made a big difference.
Thank you. Thank you.
Maya is asking, was the machine successful and what was the success rate?
I presume she's talking about the harvesting and
Mhm.
planting. Yes, the process was deemed successful, and right now, machine harvesting is side by side with the manpower on the industry because there's an attrition happening with regards to the labor force because there's an attractiveness in the construction sector. Now, think about this carefully. You know, we're building a stadium at Palmyra. You know, we're building a hotel at Palmyra. You know, we're building an entire shopping center and mall at Palmyra. There's the Exxon is building the school at Port Morant. There's going to be a lot of build outs happening at Skeldon. As you know, there's a bridge going to be connecting Guyana and Suriname. All these projects requires thousands of people. They're not sitting at home. They're many of them are working in the sugar industry. So there's a competition being created. Plus, the whole Berbice River is ripe for two projects. One is the deepwater port, and hopefully, as we get bigger as an oil producer, an oil refinery for domestic consumption. So Berbice is going to be a hotbed for human development over the next 25 years. A hotbed.
Thank you so much. Mr. Singh, we will now ask you for your closing remarks.
Well, I just want to thank Dr. Tara, who um, asked me to, Doc, you've been asking me for several months, but I had to integrate into a new cultural system in Europe, and thus I didn't want to talk and about that. I just wanted to bury my head and get stuff done. I'm well settled, so I wanted to to my final comment will be is that we need to focus on the the positives. A new year, and at the end of the day, we have a shortage of people in Guyana, and we need every soul involved in the human and economic development of the country. Um, I want to appeal especially to the younger people who are listening on this program. Um, Education is critical, or a skill, because the new world is about a skill. Get yourself skilled quickly, because there's a lot of opportunities that are going to be coming to Guyana if they're not already here. And opportunities waits on no one. So get upskilled as quickly as possible, and join the effort to make Guyana into a great place, because we have the potential, we have the resources. All we need is more skilled people to help the conversion process to happen. And on that note, I want to thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Now, before we close, we do have a question for Dr. Ganga Ramdas. And thank you for the reminder, Mr. Singh. He says the president and the VP have explained many times that renegotiation of the oil and gas contract at this time will not be in Guyana's interest. And they have explained why. So, why do you continue to push for renegotiation? And this question is for Dr. Ramdas.
There are two types of costs in the oil sector that has been grafted on to the Guyana's economy. There are the direct costs, which our oil is paying for every penny of it. But then there are spillover indirect costs. In New Year's Day, I have an article in Starbuck News that deals with indirect costs. If you look at table 10.1 in the Bank of Guyana annual report, you will see that Guyana's GDP has been reduced by an item called FISIM. That is an indirect cost of using Guyana's financial system. Now, that reduces the country's income and, of course, its spending. So the GDP has been reduced because of indirect costs. The Canadians' input output modeling, they have mastered the idea of indirect cost for each dollar of spending by the government. So when the private sector spends, there are indirect costs. When the government spends, there are indirect costs. What are these indirect costs? The use of our environment for waste disposal and so forth. The use of our environment for traffic and congestion. These are other costs that are not budgeted for, and these are all zero. The oil industry does not cater to that. Economic costs takes into consideration both the direct and indirect cost. So under Article 24 of the PSA, that's the production and sharing agreement with ExxonMobil, Article 24 has a clause called force majeure. That means some conditions have substantially been changed that inflicts costs on Guyana. And therefore, the industry should pay its taxes to the consolidated fund, and we need to renegotiate that. Otherwise, something will happen. I wouldn't say what will happen, but something will happen because these indirect costs are not catered for through the oil revenues. They're repatriated to Exxon shareholders. We need to be clear about that.
Okay.
So that's my answer. Force majeure, Article 24, conditions have changed, and we need to renegotiate the contract on that. One can go to Starbuck News. I have the full article there, which was I didn't see it until today. It was published on January 1st.
Yeah. Yeah. Can we make a comment quickly? I understand Dr. Ganga is speaking to this issue from the point of view of economic analysis. Now, the new PSAs that the government has developed, they have changed, and Exxon has to pay. They move the oil recovery cost from 75 to 65. They got to pay 10% corporate tax, etc. The, the what you call the other costs will all be the 2% royalty now will increase to 8%. So the new contract take all these indirect costs into consideration. They'll be probably, but right now the government has said categorically they will not renegotiate it as much as the indirect costs will not be shown. They would, I will tell you, they will not renegotiate the Starbuck block contract.
The
All the new,
let me
the
just
Starbuck
mention
block.
this. The Stabroek Buck has the bulk of the oil that's under the ground there. We don't know what quantities are in those other peripheral areas. So we need to get our fair share now and not put it into on certain terms with
Yeah.
those other
Yeah, yeah.
blocks.
Um, Doc,
I
just let me. I got a 9:30 with somebody, so can
Yeah.
I
mhm.
allow you? I mean, please
Yeah.
continue conversation, but thank you very much for inviting me. Yeah.
Thank
Just one
you.
last question, Mr. Ambassador, if he's still there.
No, he's gone,
Yeah.
and I
Because
think
I just want to mention Singapore, they don't
Yeah.
have an agricultural sector. They got rid of their agriculture. So he has to be careful when he's commenting on Singapore. I was there. I wanted to go to the factories and
No,
so
no,
on, and they said no
no,
agriculture.
I think when people refer to Singapore, they mean Singapore from an economic point of view. They got a high income, GDP, etc. Um, but
Dr. Tara, maybe you can set up a day where we can go a little bit more in depth in regards to this conversation.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Okay, so
Okay.
Dr. Ganga, I'll
Dr.
see you
Ganga.
Yeah.
Yes,
and have a happy new
we
year. Yeah,
yes, happy New
Happy
Year
New Year
to
to
yeah,
both
everybody.
of
yeah,
you and to our
yeah,
viewers. Thank you for taking the
yeah,
time to join us this
uh,
evening. We want to take this opportunity to thank you and also wish you a very happy new year.
yeah.
The Guyana Dialogue will be turning 3 years this year, and we are excited. Thanks to all of
Mm.
you for taking the time to join us every Thursday at 7 p.m. We appreciate you and we thank you. Until next time, I am your host, Shamisa Ali, and this is the Guyana Dialogue. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Shamiza. All the best.
Good evening.
Good
Good
evening,
evening,
viewers.
Chamini.